So as everyone probably knows, the goblins in J.K. Rowling's universe in Harry Potter are kind of an anti-Semitic stereotype. Like, it's not just that they're hook-nosed, it's that they're hook-nosed with, like, they look like they have filed teeth, and their default expression seems to be, like, evil. Does no one else feel like if you gave an alt-writer, like, hey, can you design some inferior races? Like, they would bust some of these out, you know? You know what I'm talking about, right? The way the dwarves were made to look comical was never, I guess it was just never like racially coded in a problematic way. And then even when the dwarves are taken more seriously, like in The Lord of the Rings with Gimli and stuff, like he's cool. I love Gimli so much. Who doesn't love Gimli? Does anyone here not like Gimli? This is a Gimli stan channel. We fan cam. Thank you. All right, so anyway, in a sort of ongoing recognition that not only am I never wrong, but I'm always actually more right than I thought I was before, everything associated with J.K. Rowling just progressively gets worse with time. You know, obviously I got in some heat a little while ago for pointing out that J.K. Rowling doesn't care about misogyny because she's right-wing, and all the people who like her are right-wing, and they don't care, and the thing that really offends them is the existence of trans people. So if you really want to, you know, not give her any optical credence, then all trans people can just go in the closet, I guess, if you really want to. If you're really that concerned with giving bigots nothing to complain about, it's not going to work, okay? Very much a black people pull up your pants vibe to that one. Don't like it. Anyway, so I think we can all agree, like, what the J.K. Rowling mental profile is, right? Like, J.K. Rowling was a Blairite. Her books were sort of tepid neoliberal bathwater, like used bathwater, like several times used. Like maybe the family's very poor and everyone had to go in there. And I'm not a big fan of the series, but I think I speak for everyone here when I say that there was a kind of innocence to the bigotry that we've recognized in her books now. There's a lot of weird stuff in there, right? Like there's essentially slavery apologia in the books. You know, Hermione is made fun of for that. If you want a really good video on this, Sean recently did a video on Harry Potter. It's basically got like a really, it's got like everything in there, you know. The fact is, when I read that stuff when I was a kid, it felt like weird, but I wasn't that politically educated at the time because I was like 13. And also it all felt wrapped up in this kind of wondrous innocence of the medium that it felt like even if there was some problem there, it was like, oh, okay, like whatever. It's just weird, you know. It's not indicative of anything. It's just weird. But obviously we know that's not the case. My personal feeling is that J.K. Rowling 10 to 15 years ago considered herself to be a progressive, you know, well-to-do, like, you know, engaged person. You know, she's like she you know, cutting edge, you know, pushing the envelope. And I think what happened is that pushback from actual progressives has, in her mind, created the idea of this progressive who goes too far, and she has gotten increasingly reactionary in opposition to that person. So she thought she was very progressive for saying, you know, Dumbledore was actually gay, sort of after the books were already done. But now I feel like she's treading off that ground as well. So like her pen name, and again, this is brought up in the Sean video, her pen name is literally the name of the person who invented conversion therapy, a form of torture for LGBT people, you know? It's quite a coincidence, which is, you know, a little strange there. On Twitter just the other day, here she is attacking the South Wales police. Good evening, supporting our communities is not virtual signaling. They mean virtue signaling, of course. And we make no apologies for doing so. So J.K. Rowling is attacking them. The South Wales police here are referring to protecting their community after a homophobic hate crime was committed. That is the context to this. So this has nothing to do. This isn't about like, yeah, here. The virtue signaling J.K. Rowling is laughing about, this person blocked me, by the way, so I had to go incog. The virtue signaling J.K. Rowling is laughing about is South Wales Police LGBT plus network doing community outreach work 10 minutes walk from Boot Park, where Dr. Gary Jenkins was brutally murdered in a horrific homophobic attack in July 2021. So there's nothing here that's about trans people. Nobody here attacked J.K. Rowling. This is J.K. Rowling explicitly attacking the South Wales Police Department for rebuking a person who said that it was virtue signaling for them trying to stand with the community after a gay person was murdered in a homophobic attack, okay? J.K. Rowling hates gay people. She hates trans people. She hates Jews. She hates non-white people. J.K. Rowling is a reactionary. It is as evident and clear in everything she does and has produced as it could ever be in a person who explicitly endorses those bigotries. The only person who doesn't know this is J.K. Rowling, who I genuinely think believes in her mind that she's the real progressive and everyone else has just gone overboard, you know? It is in a way a kind of destiny syndrome, isn't it? Where you define yourself exclusively through opposition to what you consider to be the hyperbolic extreme left, and in doing so push yourself further away from the actual left until, well, I don't want to equivocate here. J.K. Rowling is on almost every imaginable political position worse than Destiny is. So I don't even want to, symptoms, similar thought processes, a similar ailment, a disease shared by many people. But I talk too much, okay? Anyway, at this point, as I've said before, I'll try not to get too bitter about it, but any effort wasted on bitching that people's behavior from the left is giving us a bad name because J.K. Rowling doesn't like it, well, you know what else J.K. Rowling considers bad optics? Police departments saying they want to support the gay community after a gay person is murdered in a park 10 minutes away. That's bad optics to J.K. Rowling. If you're very concerned about forestalling her judgment, then just don't care when gay people are murdered. That's something you can do to help out, and that's what her community likes as well. Her community is pro-gay murder. Why wouldn't it be? They're conservatives. There's no such thing as TERFs, guys. There are like 5 real TERFs out there, and the rest of them are just conservatives who weaponize feminist language as a way of wedging attacks against trans people and never actually advocate for anything even close to women's rights. They're not feminists. It's fake. It's a psyop. Don't believe the hype. Anyway, I'm rambling. New video game. Let's go. New Harry Potter game. Let's get some cover art on screen. This game looks sick. Yeah, Hogwarts Legacy. Let's go. It's Elden Ring. Except it's probably going to be worse and nothing like Elden Ring. But it's got a lot of fog in it and there's a lot of very yellow light, so that's like Elden Ring. This does look like Elden Ring, doesn't it? I remember the movies. Hogwarts doesn't look like this, okay? Okay. Yes, this is going to be the Dark Souls of anti-Semitism, it seems. I just saw the fancy-looking new Harry Potter game is about quelling a goblin rebellion that threatens to upend the social order, and you cannot convince me these people don't know what they're doing. Lol. So, basically, the narrative, as I understand it right now, is this. So, as everyone probably knows, the goblins in J.K. Rowling's universe in Harry Potter are kind of an anti-Semitic stereotype. Now, in my mind, this is like a light anti-Semitism in the first book when they're introduced. When I first read the first book, and upon rereading the relevant passages and seeing the movie, the bits of the movie, like on YouTube, like, oh, when are the goblins introduced, This seemed to me, again, like a kind of innocent bigotry, like, J.K. Rowling seems to me like a person who lacks any introspective capabilities whatsoever. It's possible that when she thinks of, like, goblins, she in her head thinks, oh yeah, money-grubbing, long-nosed, bank-running goblins. And in her head, the word Jewish never comes up. Does that make any sense? Like, I feel like she might be lacking in self-awareness enough and might be so self-assured in her perceived progressivism that in her mind, she can think that and go, yes, that is the trope, That's what we're going with, and never think it's problematic. And when other people point out that it is, she's like, whoa! You know what I mean. However, with time, things have only gotten, let's say, less innocent. The portrayal of the goblins gets worse in later books and movies. Oh, I know. Did Blizzard do this too with goblins in Warcraft? No. Actually, the goblins in Warcraft, I think, are kind of dope. They were basically like a slave race. It's depicted as bad, by the way. There's a lot of bad stuff in the Warcraft universe. Who were like mining in like a cavern that were full of crystals that made them really smart, but it made them like psychotic smart, and they broke free, and they're basically all like mobster rocket engineers now. Basically, that's the vibe. Like, there are some super wealthy, greedy goblins, but it's basically just like their leadership. If you had anything which would define goblins like as a group in Warcraft, they're all mobsters and racketeers and pirates, and they love building bombs and rockets, you know? Cool. Great. That's great. Yeah, love that. No notes. Great, Yeah, tri-state Italian. Basically tri-state Italian pirates with the pyrotechnic knowledge of like a 21st century arsonist. And the resource acquisition capabilities of like fucking Jeff Bezos. So that's great. Let's continue for a bit. It looks like a very well crafted piece of right-wing propaganda. They didn't even have the shame to present it as the goblin underworld or criminalize them. They're literally saying these things are getting uppity and don't know their rightful place in society. This is kind of a trope in the Harry Potter universe. Again, watch Sean's video on Harry Potter, where like socioeconomic differences between different races in Harry Potter, like the fantasy races, are just like where people are supposed to be. Again, it fits in really, really well in J.K. Rowling's worldview, where the way the world exists right now is the way the world should be, and you're progressive for standing with the way the world is now, as opposed to the way it used to be, which was worse, but trying to make the world any better would mean that you're going too far, and that would mean that you're one of the crazy progressives that should be shamed or attacked. What's funny is goblins aren't even the HP faction known for being enslaved and abused as part of the fabric. It's supposedly wonderful and aspirational society. They're just telling themselves at this point the Untermenschen throwing off the chains is threat number one. It takes some real commitment to look at the various controversies surrounding Harry Potter and go with the group people think is an anti-Semitic stereotype aren't happy about their place in society as the main villains of your huge multi-million-dollar media venture, Lord. So, I will say, I do feel this is an uncharitable reading before the game has come out, because obviously it's very possible to have a story where the oppressed people rise up and they're the villains, but then as you play the game, it's like, oh wait, they're actually very sympathetic. That's possible. That has happened in games before. Will it happen here? Probably not. I want to read a little bit more. I keep saying that. After some Googling, what the actual fuck, and now we get the Harry Potter lore, which I had such a fun time reading this earlier, because I don't know the lore, Anyway, the Goblin Rebellions were a series of rebellions in which the goblin population of the wizarding world revolted against discrimination and prejudice toward their kind by wizards and witches. They were most prevalent during the 17th and 18th century, but even in modern times there were subversive goblin groups working in secret against the British Ministry of Magic, according to the Daily Prophet. The historical rebellions have been described as bloody and vicious. One rebellion in 1612 took place in the vicinity of the I feel like such a nerd just reading this. Hogsmeade Village. The Three Broomsticks Inn was used as the wizard headquarters of the rebellion. Okay, the problem that I have with reading stuff about Harry Potter, as opposed to other nerd lore, is that I feel like Star Wars and Star Trek nerds can fuck. And I don't think Harry Potter nerds can. I think Harry Potter nerds are sexless, I think that if you go to like a Star Trek, like a Trekkie convention, and you go there and you're social, you can get mad nerd pussy. You can get fucking milked, all right? You can leave empty. You can leave maiden full. But a Harry Potter like fan, leaving aside that everyone there is going to be like 12, some like nerdy adult, like I don't know. There are like adult Harry Potter fandoms and like Christ, but you can go to one of those and they're all just going to be like sexless millennials with horn-rimmed glasses who like talking about how stuff is problematic, but who also have themselves incredibly problematic views. I get Swarf vibes from the whole thing. TERFs, obviously, but like with Swarf... You know what I mean? Yeah, okay, whatever. These people are not fucking. Anyway, Wizard headquarters for the rebellion. What about Warhammer 40k fans? Maidenless. In 1752, another Goblin rebellion occurred in Great Britain. Due to mismanaging the rebellion, minister resigned. His replacement, Vessel Flack, lasted in office only 2 months. Resigning when the Goblins allied themselves with the werewolves, Hephaestus Gore was then elected minister. Good name, Hephaestus Gore. Very good one. Then there was another rebellion, and then another rebellion, and then another rebellion. The Goblin Rebellion is one of the most important topics to fucking talked about in wizard history class exams. Remember the date of the... Okay. So according to the Wombat, these rebellions may have occurred because of the lack of goblin representation in the whizzing gamut. Attempts to enslave goblins as house elves, stripping of wand privileges, wizard attempts to control Gringotts, or the brutal goblin slayings by Yardley Platt. Thank you. Very nice. Okay, so basically, in the context of the Harry Potter universe, this is basically exactly like a story about a slave revolt where you have to put down the slaves. That's basically what we're talking about here. This would be like historical fiction if you were like the slave patrols that were sent to put down like John Brown or something. Okay, just how do you know that? I don't know that. It's possible that a game like that would have you, the protag, realize that John Brown is the good guy. Like, you know, like the game would start. You'd be like down there in the South, and you're like Dixie Belle leader or whatever. Be like, now these folks are getting uppity. They can't go on giving guns to no. And then they would say the N-word, and then you go run on down there, and you're like, hoo, hoo, hoo. You got your rifle, you know. And then you see John Brown. John Brown's like, yo, slavery's bad, yo, and you're like, fuck. And then you join with them. That's possible. I'm not saying it's not. It's possible. I'm just saying. Look, I want to be clear, okay? I don't think the game is guaranteed to be problematic. Let's just finish the Twitter thread, and then I'll give my full... I'm convinced this is intentional trolling now. Harry Potter game designer used to run anti-social justice YouTube channel. That's not a joke. A Gamergator is designing this game. Trans-exclusionary feminist, indeed, referred to the Me Too movement as a moral panic. Freelance journalist Liam Robertson tweeted screenshots of Allen Studio designer Troy Leavitt's YouTube account February 19th that showcased videos with titles such as The Injustice of Social Justice, In Praise of Cultural Appropriation, and In Defense of John Lasseter, a former Pixar executive who left the company in 2018 following sexual misconduct allegations. Trans-exclusionary radical feminist, indeed. Yes, sir. Let's go. Leavitt's comments on social media, combined with Harry Potter creator J.K. Rowling's anti-trans comments on social media, incentivized Recetera to ban all promotional material regarding the upcoming video game. Who wrote this article? Why are there typos here? Promotinal. Right, thank you. First time we've done something like this, we consider this a very exceptional case, blah, singular reach and influence. As I understand it, J.K. Rowling generally exercises an incredibly strict control over her intellectual property. She tends to be very controlling. Here are the videos of the lead designer? No way. Oh, man. Ah, yes! In defense of John Lasseter, why I'm opposed to net neutrality. It's okay to be a gamer! The injustice of social justice. Are gamers toxic? A response to Charles Randall. God, I'm like looking through a time chamber. Holy shit. Excerpt from Strange World of MGTOW in praise of cultural appropriation. Female game designer fired for sexist tweet. NBC News blames gamers. Response to gamers are still dead, y'all. Are thought crimes becoming real? Jesus Christ. Social justice, Ten Commandments. And hey, you thought you missed her? Of course, Anita Sarkeesian is in the thumbnail that I'm blocking down there. The legacy of Anita's tropes versus women. There we go. This has to be a joke. It's too on the nose. Dude, I'm sorry. This is what skeptic channels were like. They were all too on the nose. These are the only people who lack self-awareness more than Rowling herself. This is just what it was like for years in YouTube until I showed up and single-handedly disbanded this. And we're going back to this, by the way. We're going back to this. Yeah, they dominated YouTube. These channels weren't like made fun of. This was YouTube. If you were making fun of channels like this, you were the massively the minority. You were harassed constantly. This was YouTube. We're going back to that. Get ready. Anyway, this shit is like if far-right media got the money to blah-de-blah-de-blah. Avalanche has blah, 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 blah. The player is tasked with investigating a rumored goblin rebellion led by a goblin named Ranrock, further noting there was an uneasy alliance between the goblins and the dark wizards. And here we have Goblin Rebellion, Truth or Gobbledygook. And see, we have a goblin looking very mean here. And now we have 3 goblins looking quite mean. I will say, however, that the constable goblin over here looks fantastic, and I love him. I do have to say also that it is very odd to me. Yeah, the drip. It is very odd to me that they decided to make Harry Potter goblins look this evil by default. Like, it's not just that they're hook-nosed, it's that they're hook-nosed with, like, they look like they have filed teeth, and their default expression seems to be, like, evil. Like, does no one else feel like these, like, visual designs could be easy? Like, does no one else feel like if you gave an alt-writer, like, hey, can you design some inferior races? Like, they would bust some of these out, you know? You know what I'm talking about, right? Can you draw us some inferior peoples? You know? I don't know. Again, I know that I understand there's a lot of leeway given in, like, depictions here. I did appreciate how in The Lord of the Rings, the dwarves and the hobbits, I think generally looked, I don't know if respectable is the right word, because the dwarves were always made to look kind of comic, but the way the dwarves were made to look comical was never, I guess it was just never, like, racially coded in a problematic way. Does that make sense? Like, at least, like, even in the Hobbit movies, where the dwarves are made to look, like, kind of goofy and stuff, like, they're goofy, but, like, they're goofy in, like, a very obviously cartoonish way. So you know how I talked about the innocence of J.K. Rowling and Harry Potter? Like, how there was problematic stuff there, but it always felt kind of like, I don't know, excusable because it was just part of that wonderful wizarding world. When I think of, like, goofy fantasy races that are in line with, like, a goofy world, this is what I think of. Like, what's a goofy dwarf we can do? I know. What if he looked like this guy? Like, all right, this isn't problematic at all. It's just not. It's fine, you know? It's goofy, but it's fine. And then even when the dwarves are taken more seriously, like in The Lord of the Rings with Gimli and stuff, like, he's cool. I love Gimli. I love Gimli. I love Gimli so much. Who doesn't love Gimli? Does anyone here not like Gimli? Who doesn't love Gimli? Everyone loves Gimli. Nobody doesn't love Gimli. He's awesome, and I love Gimli. This is a Gimli stan channel, all right? We fan cam. Thank you. Yeah, Gimli is my comfort character. Thank you. The only point I'm trying to make here is that, like, and if you take a look at the hobbits, too. So hobbits in The Lord of the Rings literally just look like humans. They're just shorter humans. They're, in terms of, like, if you look at their face or them just, like, standing there, they just look like humans, you know? So their size is really the only thing that distinguishes them in that respect. Oh, they have big feet. That's true. Again, not really problematic at all, actually. But then you have the depiction of the goblins in Harry Potter. This is from the first movie. And again, not to limit creative license here, they can look like, there's nothing inherently wrong with looking like this, but instantly, the fantasy tropification is trending in a much weirder direction. You know what I'm talking about? Like immediately, the way in which they're designed, the characterization is so much closer to, like, how we think negatively, at least historically, of peoples that we've considered inferior. You know, like, instantly, there's so much to call upon there. Not really here, not with the hobbits, but here, yeah, you know? I guess the thing that really gets me about their design is that there's this weird combination. Phenomenal work done in the modeling here, by the way, from a purely artistic perspective. There's a really weird combination of, like, deliberately inhuman facial modeling, like in a way that complies with a lot of our historical stereotypes about, like, inferiority. A naturally evil face. Like, the way the face is depicted is specifically, like, like, it's modeled in a way to make it look unsympathetic, cruel, but it's also dressed up like a businessman, which, again, it's like, there are so many traits that I get with this, right? Like, conniving, greedy. Like, it reads off their face. It's how they're designed, you know? They have tiny little beady eyes, which makes them very unsympathetic. And I could be off on this, but in the main Harry Potter books and movies, is there ever a goblin character who's, like, developed fully? Like a character who's given pathos and thoughts and dreams and stuff? No, that's what I thought. Because the house elves, there are a few at least. No matter how problematic that whole situation is, there is pathos given. There's grip hook, kind of. If there is, I just don't remember it. I have never. I don't know. Is this design not one which you consider inherently unsympathetic? It is to me. The house elves look like freaky little troll goblin things, but they're given giant eyes, and they're meant to be made sympathetic just through how sort of pathetic they are, I guess. It's just weird. It's just weird to me, you know? So the designs feel off. This whole game feels like it's being Grip Hook betrays Harry Potter for a sword. Wait, so there is one goblin character developed in this entire main series, and its ultimate role is to betray the main character? Yes? Really? Griphook was a goblin who worked at Gringotts Wizarding Bank. He'd later go on the run during the height of the Wizarding War. Following the line, he would later assist Harry Potter in his break-in of Gringotts. Despite being rescued by them, Griphook's general mistrust of wizard kind resulted in him betraying Harry, Ron, and Hermione. He betrayed them because he believed they would not hand him the Sword of Gryffindor after destroying the cup and other Horcruxes. This act of betrayal eventually resulted in his own downfall. The goblins reported the cup's theft to Voldemort, who subsequently slaughtered all of them with the killing curse in a fit of rage. Okay, so I'm just gonna hit on this directly, okay? I'm just gonna be specific with this one. The plot is about, apparently, the plot is about the goblins siding with dark wizards, okay? Nowhere in all of Harry Potter canon have I been given the understanding that there is enough moral complexity in this universe for the dark wizards to ever have a good moral point, you know? It's not like the dark wizards are some kind of neglected or betrayed people who are trying to fight for what's theirs. The dark wizards are evil because they're evil. There's a childish morality at play there. Voldemort is evil because he's evil. The people who serve Voldemort are evil because they're evil. There's not any complex political machination behind the scenes. They're evil because they're evil. They like doing bad things because they like doing bad things. That's kid book logic, and that's what they are. So goblins siding with them just feels like, does none of this kind of feel a little bit like the Nazi idea that like black and brown people are being used by Jews in the United States in order to facilitate it feels like we have all these ideas about cartoonishly evil people and like lesser races with inherent biases against the upstanding, morally righteous wizarding population, in spite of the fact that the wizards have objectively enslaved a bunch of them, you know, to the admission of the canon itself. And like all this just feels like it's playing on race war politics, right? Like it seems like by any fair accounting of the situation, the goblins have every right to kill their way to freedom. Because as far as I can tell, the goblins have been subject to multiple attempts at enslavement. They're currently denied the ability to own wands, which is very reminiscent to me of the Nazi German laws which prevented Jews from owning guns. You know, like a wand is a gun in the wizarding world. Clearly there's a parallel there. And denying the lesser races the ability to defend themselves. Same with why they didn't give guns to black people back during the slave days, you know? You have all of that, and then in the canon of the story, the vengeful, angry group are the goblins and not the wizards who keep them essentially in an apartheid state. All of the preceding political logic here suggests to me that this is borderline far-right propaganda. Now, it is possible that a heel turn is done, that changes are made, that somehow the story ends up being nuanced, but no reading of Harry Potter up to this point has given me the impression that's going to be the case. Like, you'd have to be, I think, pretty undeservedly trusting to believe that's how this is going to play out. Like, it's going to end up being, like, not weird at all and progressive or whatever. Like, yeah, I don't know. I don't trust that. Also, the segregation of wizards and non-magic people in the modern day is fucking stupid. Watch the Sean video. I completely agree. There's a ton of really dumb stuff. In the books, they say Death Eaters and Voldemort rally the oppressed creatures like werewolves and goblins and the giants against the Ministry of Magic, and Dumbledore had tried to not let Voldemort do that by liberating these creatures from oppression, but he fails. Okay, but here's the thing. The idea of an ultimate evil using the legitimate grievances of the lesser races to attack the higher race is the bedrock of almost every modern fascist conspiracy theory. Now, of course, in that allegory, the dark wizards would be the ones who are taking the Judaic stereotype, and the goblins wouldn't be. They would just be one of the oppressed groups being used. So there's kind of a conflation of tropes here. Um, low points to J.K. Rowling here for fucking up her anti-Semitic allegory. But still, the underlying logic here is incredibly problematic. I think I'll play this game on stream. I really want to see what the vibes are. We need to do like a stream review or something. We need to find out what's going on. We got to get to the bottom of it. Don't buy it. I didn't say I'd buy it. I said that I would play it on stream. Anyway, I yeah, I don't know. I'm just I don't know. It's weird, man. It's really, 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 really weird. Reading too much into a children's book? Retard logic. First of all, the books are aged up with time. Also, it's one of the biggest media properties in existence right now, and tons of adults engage with it. Very, very stupid. Like, 5 wizards could end world hunger, they could build TARDIS, hence they can comfortably... No. Xander Hall. The wizards fixing real-world, like, political problems would be a change to the status quo. Clearly, that's unacceptable for Rowling, okay? It just don't worry about it, okay? That's just not... It's not acceptable. There are so many things that I don't like about the Harry Potter world. I've rambled about all of them before. I've rambled about so many of them before. But I guess if I had to distill it down to one like fundamental problem, I guess the issue is that there's a complete incongruity between children's story morality and real world political like events, you know? Like the books talk about, and now they've even mentioned like the Holocaust in like the Fantastic Beasts series. They talk about like inequality, war, slavery, poverty, oppression, like apartheid, slave revolts, and all that shit. But the morality of the stories never evolves beyond bad people are bad because they're bad, and good people are good because they're good. And don't get me wrong, that's fine for like a child's story, right? Like the alchemist, what's it called? The alchemist stone? What's the first one? The Philosopher's Stone. The Philosopher's Stone. That's fine. If you want, like, childish morality in that one, the Slytherins are the bad guys, the Gryffindors are the good guys, Dumbledore is the good wizard, and Snape is the bad wizard, and he's mean. And the trio find the adventure, and Harry gets to see his departed parents, and it's somber, That's fine. No hate. Obviously, there are problems with that in retrospect, but that as a concept, fine, okay, it's consistent. But, by the last book, just whatever, just cut the segment, stop.